He's flown into gunfire, pulled wounded from war zones, and guarded generals with a loaded firearm and zero room for error. Andrew Utz didn't read about pressure. He lived it at altitude. From kicking doors with the 108th MP Company to hauling bodies in a blackhawk, this man's logged more miles in chaos than most will in comfort. These days he's behind the controls of a commercial jet. But make no mistake, he still flies like every second counts. This isn't your average pilot's story. This is Andrew Utz. And his flight path is forged in grit, not glide. On this episode of Tactical Tequila Podcast with your host, Matt Wilson. If you enjoy the show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it to your social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. Matt with Tactical Tequila. Tonight, we have a fabulous episode planned for you. I have Andrew Utz on the podcast tonight. Andrew is a battle-tested Army veteran turned commercial aviator with over 2 decades of experience across war zones, rotor blades, and secure skies. From leading medevac missions in Blackhawks to protecting NATO leadership, Andrew's career has defined by precision under fire. Now a first officer with SkyWest Airlines, he continues to fly the same calm intensity that he carried with him through combat. Andrew, welcome to the show. So happy to have you on. It's been forever.
It's been too long, and thanks, Matt. You definitely brought me in strong, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
I figured if anyone would appreciate their intro, you would be that one.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, how could you not?
Just to kind of dive into things, you and I, we've been deployed together. We spent some time in the 108th MP Company together, the 503rd, the 16th MP. What's one sound from deployment that still makes your pulse spike?
Oh, man. Probably one sound from deployment that makes my kind of gets me going a little bit is probably the sound from like CRAM and everything over the loudspeakers of like incoming, 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 because I think it's kind of novel to think about it, to let you know, hey, something's incoming, but where is it? Right? Because, it's so easy to be reactionary to it. Like, I hear it, I run, but do you really have time? Are you going to be able to go somewhere? It's just one of those unknown things. And it's almost, traveling down the road. You don't know what's out there.
I agree. And, it's that whistle that flies over you. And you're just wondering, do I move? Do I not? Do I move?
Yeah. Especially on third deployment, that was another thing that was still happening. Even from our first and second deployment, still there, still happening. And, I now have to be the good leader, because it wouldn't be smart of me not to tell my soldiers, like, hey, get to cover. Right. So obviously when I hear it go off, I'm running, and so are they.
When you were overseas, you ever walk into a room and know you weren't walking out the same when you walked into those rooms, whether it'd be on a raid or, just an IP station or...
I think probably my point was when I got on the plane in Balad to go back home. And I kind of knew this wasn't going to be the same place as the way we left it. And sure enough, soon after we got home, you could turn on the news and you saw how everything changed in pretty one fell swoop almost. And it was kind of crazy to see that happen right there. But you always have that gut instinct that, it can't be this good for us to just one and done and everything's done and over with. So
Yeah, and I feel on this, I believe it would have been your second deployment. I feel like we did very well other than the loss of Campbell.
Yeah.
And souffrant in that. I think for a company, I think that we did very well. Sure, we were, attacked a lot, but also I think that we just took no BS, you know, everywhere we went. I feel like even though we were tested on some of those um, outings that and the patrols, during those times they saw who was out there and they just didn't want to mess with our company.
It also goes out to the leadership that we had, whether it was at the company level, the battalion level, even at the platoon levels. You look up and down to your left and right, it didn't matter. You had great leadership. You also had leadership that genuinely cared about what we were doing when we were out on patrol. And that makes a huge difference. It really does.
Yeah, because if your leadership is buying into what you're doing, then even the lowest level will buy into your mission and buy into everything that you're doing and want to work and create a better life for those that you're standing up for.
I agree 100%.
um how do you train for war that doesn't follow the rules?
I mean, can you? That's kind of a difficult question because so many of our adversaries, especially in GWAT, we've been dealing with that for the past 20 years. We're dealing with an enemy that doesn't follow the law of armed conflict, doesn't follow the Geneva Conventions, things of that nature. So, how do we find ourselves in a position to be able to counter that and still be successful on the battlefield? And I think it takes a good measure of restraint, but it also speaks to the level of intelligence and lethality that soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine are able to display on the battlefield. Understanding that we're not only trying to show lethality and show dominance in the battlefield, but we're also trying to show almost on a strategic level to the rest of the world, like, hey, we can get business done, but we don't have to be barbaric about it. We can still follow the rules. And I think having that type of pretty much success, especially counterterrorism, I think that speaks great volumes to our warfighters.
Is there a moment that made you realize that you're not the same man who signed the enlistment papers?
Oh, man. I would say probably coming back from my first deployment, 0304 to Mosul. Um, Being able to reflect and understand where you started from and who you were when you first started um, is a great value to anybody, regardless of what age you are and where you're at in life and what you're trying to accomplish. So, having that at a young age and being able to reflect on that, whether good or bad, was really insightful for me because things just change. As a 19-year-old seeing war, that's a pretty young age. And you look at development, that can change your ability, not so much your ability, but change you from a neurological standpoint or a psychological standpoint on how you view yourself and how you view the rest of the world.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And having spent a lot of time on patrols in Mosul and in Baghdad itself, um, when we were patrolling with the IPs, and I had Johnny Walker on the podcast last season,
Yeah.
and we talked about one of the times that we raided a house because somebody was messing with his family, and we went and raided the house, went in, and I came out, and luckily enough I had slipped coming out because it wasn't a stair, it was like a triangle ramp to
Okay.
get into the house,
Yeah.
and I had just slipped coming out, and there was a guy standing there with an AK.
Wow.
And he got spooked as we were coming as I came out, and he just took off running, and it was just one of those, I don't want to say it, more serendipitous moments, but it's one of those things that you're just like, wow, somebody was really watching me on this one.
Believe me, I've been there. I've been there.
So when you were on patrol and when the convoys rolled out and the roads went quiet, what ran through your head most?
Especially on my third deployment. Now I'm a squad leader. Um, I absolutely have that tribal knowledge and understanding that it's it's time to really open your eyes, keep your ears open, and be observant of what's going on around you because it's just not normal. It's absolutely not. So that's something I would always try to teach my soldiers is, hey, when it's a quiet day, might not be a great day. Or if it is, it won't be for much longer. So really need to be focusing on the small things that stick out that aren't right.
The the quiet ones were definitely the ones that you always wanted to watch out for. Um, if you didn't see anyone on the streets or you didn't see any vehicles or people walking the neighborhoods, like you knew something was up and something was about to happen, and that's when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and you're like, okay, it's go time.
Absolutely.
What's the closest moment that you ever came to calling home one last time that you feel?
I don't know if I've ever had a moment where I was predicting my demise or my death. Um, I think anytime I went on deployment and anytime I was able to talk to somebody from home, I kind of viewed it as my last moment because we all know things can change in a second, man. And here 1 minute, gone the next, unfortunately. Is there ever an exact moment? No, but hindsight always being 2020, there's plenty of times where you reflect on things and you say, yeah, well, that could have been very easily. But in the sense of I felt like it was my last, I don't
It's interesting the way that you say that is that um not knowing if it's your last moment. And why I say that's interesting is that 2 days prior to Jeremy Campbell being KIA'd, we were all right around the hooches, and there it was between first platoon and it was fourth platoon, and we all had wrestling, like this huge wrestling match outside, and it was just like 10 of us, five on each side, and we just had this wrestling match outside, and everything, once it ended, then 2 days later you're like, wow, like literally just the other day we were doing this,
right.
to blow off some steam, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
And it's just moments like that that even now, like reflecting on them, it just makes you appreciate where you're at. It makes you appreciate the people that you served with. Getting to know and still have that brother sisterhood with individuals is lifelong.
Absolutely. One of my memories of Jeremy, and it talks about reflection. Um, and I remember this from when then Captain Matt Gregg, now Colonel Gregg, Warlord Six, was doing Jeremy's eulogy, and he was talking about how many correspondence points he had, which, by the way, was a lot of correspondence points, right?
Yeah.
So to go back to that, this was before our second deployment, and this was when the barracks were still on Raleigh and Normandy, where you could like really turn up, right? So,
The black mold.
oh, I wasn't talking about the black mold, but you're not wrong. Um, anywho, um, I was coming back from the bar, and of course, like it's Friday night, whatever. I'm letting loose, having a good time. So I'm making my way back to my room, and he comes walking by and he's like, "Hey man, what's up?" I'm like, "Hey, how are you? Like, you want a beer?" And I had a beer, and he had like some takeout dinner, right? And he was like, "No, man, I'm good. I'm working on correspondence courses." Bro, and you look at who he was as a soldier, not just from that standpoint, but every other metric, and you just see what happened to him, and you just look back on that moment and you just ask, "Why, man?
Yeah.
Why?"
Anyone that we served with, you always ask, why was it their time?
Yeah.
And how did we have so many close calls and it was never our time?
Right. And the other thing I just want to point out for the record, that man was not using the CDs for correspondence courses.
So talking about missions, was there ever a mission where your instincts had saved lives during that mission?
In Iraq,
On any of your deployments?
I think it would be on my third, but it wasn't my instinct. And this is kind of a crazy story and it gets a little deep. Like I'm not trying to get into the paranormal realm or anything, but even I can't explain it, right? So, this is July of 2008. We're on the east side of the river in Baghdad at our combat outpost or our COP. And I was the commander squad leader, and he said, "Hey, Sergeant Utz, I need to go to wherever we were going that day." And it was up north. And I said, "Okay, we'll take care of it. I'll get it planned out. We'll get you going." So, in reading the intel, not getting into that realm, I could see like EFPs were slowly moving south, like closer to us, right? So, of course, we had that thing that you could like counter and whatnot, right? But then they were able to adapt to that. So, I do the patrol brief with the squad and I say, "Hey, based on intel, like let's cut it off like at this point," right? Because I looking at it, it was reasonable to say it's probably going to be around here if it does continue down, right? So we jock up, we suit up, we roll out the gate, we start rolling. And me being the stellar NCO I am, right? I'm just in the passenger seat smoking a cigarette as we're rolling down the road, right? Stellar NCO. And so just out of the blue, not even a thought crossed my mind or anything. No control over my body. I just reached over and turned off that thing. Right. And it was well south of where I intended it to be turned off at. Right. So we go about another, I don't know, 5 minutes down the road and we come underneath the bridge. And I'm number one and the commander's number three out of 4 trucks. So we come underneath this bridge and we come out the other side, and right on the other side, bam, like blue flash out my window, just fills with dust. And like our comms internal, like our VIX headsets, like cut out. And I'm just yelling to my driver, just like, go, go, go. And I'm grabbing my gunner. I'm grabbing her and bringing her down inside. And he's like, "Sergeant Utz, it's like Dad." I was like, just let it roll, right? Just let it roll. A long story short, everybody was okay. It was an EFP. But the thing was, is I can't explain how I reached over and turned that off. And to be completely honest, had I not and done it where I originally intended to, it would have went right through my window because I measured it out. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I can't explain it. I just no idea. It's crazy. I know people are going to be like, whatever. Like Utstville, that dude's always been crazy, man. Why should I listen to anything that dude has to say, right? But God's honest truth, like that is exactly what happened. And when you go through stuff like that, it makes you look at things a lot differently for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. There was this time, so it was me, Joe Cahey, and Sprad,
Okay.
and we were the third truck. We had the ASV in front of us. This was on the second deployment.
Okay.
And then we had another Humvee in front of the ASV. So we were pulling up trail. And as we're coming underneath an overpass south of Biop, I can't remember if it was Irish, but it was like right where the interchange is. So we're coming under an overpass. IED goes off, and they're shooting at us from on the top of the overpass. We also had Sergeant Green, the medic, in our truck. They shot out our AC, which filled the entire truck with Freon.
Oh, I remember this now.
And I'm driving down the road, and I have the door open so I can breathe, and they're still firing at us. We get out, the ASV comes around, and by that time they already Charlie Miked on getting out of the area. And there were some write-ups for that, which probably shouldn't have happened for some individuals. But you can't stop that.
Happens.
Um, how how many times did you ever have to fake the calm for the sake of everyone else?
Oh man. Um, Probably more than I'd like to admit, for sure. That was one of them that I just explained. There was at least two other times that I can think of in the Blackhawk where I had to do that. And once when I was on detail for NATO, for sure. So those that I can remember, I'm sure there's others, but those stick out in my mind the most.
When you worked for NATO, you were at Mons, correct?
I was a Shapian, baby.
Yeah. Mons was cool, but you know what? NATO headquarters was the best in Brussels.
Well, you know what? It's hard to compare. It's like saying, would you rather be in Chapel Hill or would you rather be in Lumberton? Right. And
Chapel Hill.
I'm not dissing either one, right? Because they both have their own unique set, right? But that's kind of what it comes down to. It's really hard to say I love Mons more than I love Brussels just because of how much there is to do in Brussels and how much diversity there actually is.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I would agree. If you're going more countryside, small town feeling, then Mons for sure. But you want the nightlife, you want just like the hustle and bustle of everything. Brussels is where it's at.
Yeah, no doubt.
But either way, the 3 years that I spent in Belgium, loved it. I would go back in a heartbeat. And to move on, what do you feel that your darkest moment in country was, and who pulled you out of it?
Probably losing Jeremy. If I had to, if I had to think about it. Um, and you know what? I don't know who brought me out of it, but I think part of it is just the warrior ethos. You lose one, you just got to keep going. Especially somebody like him, that's what they would want you to do.
And talking about that and just the darkest moment, are there any scars that you brought home and no one can really see, or is that something that you're open about?
I don't talk about it very much. I try to keep it very, very close knit. I don't know, maybe a handful of people I've ever talked to about the stuff that goes on over there. Some of the stuff, it's cool. It wasn't me. I saw it, or my friend told me about it, something along that line. But the really dark stuff, it's just, no, you know, I don't. I don't want to affect somebody else's mood, attitude, demeanor by what's going on with me or things that I have experienced because I chose to go through that stuff. They didn't, right? If they asked me about it, maybe, but by and large, nah, I just keep it to myself. It's
Yeah.
easier for everybody.
Well, I mean, even when they do ask about it, like, I don't feel like they're ever ready for your answer that you're going to give them. And so you have to keep it as a generalization of how you explain things, because I think a lot of people, one, probably wouldn't understand it, and they wouldn't understand, like, well, how are you still like standing tall and, being you? Um, I there's a lot, and I'm the same way. Like, honestly, there's maybe been one other episode, and I think that was Johnny Walker, where, I've expressed what more detail as to what's gone on, in my military career.
I think when to that point, I've had one person that's kind of had the reaction that you talked about where they're not prepared for it. So, for everybody, it's kind of like in The Godfather when Michael's at the wedding and Kate's sitting down and Luca Brasi's over there rehearsing his lines. And Kate's like, Michael, who is that man? Who's that scary man? And Michael goes on to tell that story where he intimidated somebody. And she was just like in complete shock and just could not believe like this is the family that she's like getting close to and everything. She wasn't ready for it.
And I know the scene that you're talking about, and looking at it now, like I can correlate the two, and I'm like, wow, like that's so the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people have a law of primacy, if you will, about war, what it's supposed to be like, how we're supposed to be when we come home because of a movie they watched, a book they've read, or social media, something to that effect. The reality of it is we're human beings, man. And, a lot of us, we're still kids when we were doing this stuff. It's crazy to think about, but we still carry it with us. It doesn't make us, I don't know. There's no reason to dehumanize us just because we've experienced different things than you have. But some people can handle it, some people can't. And for me, it's just easier for me to keep it. That's me.
I agree with you 100%. And talking about us being kids, and we experienced more in a short period of time in the first 3 years of our enlistments that most people will never endure in a lifetime. I think it's shaped us into the finer men that we are. I think that, it's rounded us out as family men, because the majority of us are now fathers, where some of us are grandpas, depending on, the older ones.
Yeah.
And it's things like that. But when it comes down to it, it has made us appreciate life more than most. It has made us not necessarily, everybody has their demons, and they deal with those not so positive days, but the majority, I would say, have positive behind them, because they realize in a blink of an eye what could happen.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they appreciate what they here and now, and they appreciate everything they have.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I want to get into talking about Black Hawk life, because after MP, you went and you were a warrant officer,
I was.
and you were a Black Hawk pilot,
Yep.
to include being a Black Hawk pilot instructor, correct?
I was. I was an instructor pilot.
One, how do you stay sharp when a wrong move from 3,000 feet turns into a steel coffin?
It's one of those things of personal experience and wrongdoing because you may have either made that mistake yourself or that there is the potential that somebody could make a mistake that goes down the lanes of A, B, or C. So you kind of always have to be on your toes. Most of the time, it's very innocent, it's harmless. It's one of those unknown things. You don't know what you don't know. And so it just, being calm, cool, and collected and especially in life, this goes to life too, just being present in the moment and understanding your situational awareness of what's going on around you, it really makes a difference. It really does. Um, has there ever been anything like that? Maybe close, but turning into a coffin immediately, nah. Those things are those things are pigs, dude. They'll fly, man.
Having been on a few myself, never had a
Yeah.
crash or anything, but I have rappelled and jumped out of both. So
Okay, that's what's up.
that was probably the funnest time, whether it was either rappel, fast rope, or jumping out of a Black Hawk. Like, that was literally the funnest time in my career that you could ever imagine. Just the adrenaline rush of always on the go, and you're doing these things that one would make most squeamish just by the view. being the doorman on a C-17 jump,
Yeah.
standing there waiting for the green light,
Yeah.
like that right there, you're just like, oh yeah.
Yeah. No doubt, man.
Continuing into this, um, is there a mission that still plays on loop in your head when you close your eyes as a pilot or even as a instructor pilot?
I think the one that stands out for me goes back to 2019. I was stationed at Fort Hood. I'm not going to get into the naming convention of back and forth. It was Fort Hood when I was there. Okay, let's just play along, right?
So it's always going to be Fort Hood, just like it was always going to be Fort Bragg.
Right. Let's play along with Chief for a minute, right? So during that time, the aviation unit at Fort Bliss was deployed to CENTCOM. So we, as a medevac unit, we actually didn't have a mission. Surprising. I can get into more detail about that. We covered down on their installation medevac out at Fort Bliss. So during that time, we got a call of a soldier that was out in the desert. If you ever been to Bliss, like we're talking way up there, man. Like it's a clip. Like we're pulling the guts out of this blackhawk, and we are just going as fast as we can. It's still taking a good amount of time to get there. So we pick up this guy, and he's definitely like, I would say on the verge of heat stroke. If not, he's pretty close to it. So we get him in, we load him up. The medic's like, hey, we gotta get to the level 1. Like, let's go. It's like, all right. So we like go screaming, come into downtown, land on the rooftop pad, get him off everything, get our medic back a few minutes later. We go over to Bliss, we shut down. Come to find out, this guy had no dog tags, no ID card, and nobody from any of the units knew who he was. It was just some soldier out there. And that's kind of the one that kind of sticks with me because it's always that curiosity, especially when you drop somebody off at a level 1, like, man, I wonder how they're doing today or whatever happened. And most of the time we don't know. But that's just kind of my like freaky story. So
Wow. Like no dog tags, no ID, and nobody knew who he was.
nope, not a clue. You had, I think it was during a big training exercise, which normally happens, if I remember correctly, May, June timeframe. And it's on the northern part of the training area on Fort Bliss. And it's a pretty large exercise. And it's kind of a precursor to NTC and then ultimately deployment. So you have like armor brigades out there, stuff like that. And there's, I don't know, PFC Schmuckatelli. Nobody knows who he is, no identification. And he's almost on the verge of heat stroke. And go pick them up, and that's it. That's just one of those oddball things that I always question about, but I think it's probably like too far into it. But I don't know. That's my one.
Maybe it's one of those militia guys trying to play soldier.
Like Jade Helm 3.0, right? The government's coming for your guns.
In training exercises, did you ever fly into like, simulated gunfire?
Yeah, we definitely did. Did that at Fort Hood. Definitely did it at Fort Bragg because obviously you have JFEX always going on. So that was a big thing for us. And especially looking at how they're trying to do like long range projection of combat strength. You would have one brigade or maybe two brigades that would jump up in Virginia. You would go up there, pick them up, and you would air assault them in back onto Bragg to simulate like that long range projection that we're trying to talk about, like over the horizon and even beyond that. That's the kind of stuff we were doing. And you would just see it, and especially seeing it from that angle instead of like being on the other side, it's, I don't know, it's weird.
And so even simulated, how does it feel to fly into gunfire when, logic tells you to turn around? Like,
So that's actually like a really good question. So if you look at like why does aviation exist? Aviation exists because we support the ground force commander above anything else. That is our sole purpose in life, right? So when you look at it, and especially when you start doing like a car, like a combined arms rehearsal, you start doing an air mission brief, things of that nature, large scale planning, and the boss actually comes in, brigade commander, battalion commander, more than likely like 11 Alpha or somebody else from who knows what, and they come down and they say, hey, this is the why, and you understand what effect you can have on that commander on the ground, you're like, okay, let's do it. Although albeit it's simulated, right? So, what else are you going to do, right? Your own battalion commander isn't going to want to hear, oh, you did a go around because there was a blank fire, huh? Okay, that's cool. Right. And for sure, all my barrel chested paratroopers in the back, they don't care. They want in, man. They want in ASAP.
And the fact that you're going around and they're going, just put us in. Fucking put us in.
Yeah. Nobody wants to hear, oh, we're going around for gunfire, because I guarantee you there's like at least a few tab dudes in the back. They're like, let's go, man. Let's go.
For sure. Did you ever lock eyes with someone on the ground and feel like the Reaper with rotor blades when
There was a SMEDEVAC that we got called out on, and it was back in Bliss, right? It's 2:00 in the morning. I'm not going to go into the details of the patient and everything. So Fort Bliss is mountainous desert. It's 2:00 in the morning. It's still like stupid hot. We have, I think, we have red illumination. So basically, we don't have a lot of illumination from the moon. So I think that night it was either like 2 or 1%. So you're under MVGs, you're screaming along, you're void of any backdrops, any contrast, textures, depth perception. It's gone, dude. You ain't got it. So it's already hard enough as it is, number one. Number two, you're going to be landing in the desert, right? If you've ever driven, you're from Ohio originally, so you know how this goes. Like at nighttime during a snowstorm, you don't turn your high beams on because it's going to feel like you're in the Millennium Falcon, right? And you can't see anything. Well, the same thing when you come in for a dust landing, that dust is eventually going to encapsulate you unless you're able to like roll faster than it is advancing on your airframe, right? But sometimes we don't have that choice. Ground will say, hey, we need you here. We look, hey, this is the only spot we got. And you just got to come straight down with it and you go up with it, right? The third is fog of battle, right? It happens so many times, especially on medevac. It's like, oh my God, we need to get Joe Snuffy to a level 1 right now, right? Everybody's trying to be a chief, right? Everybody's calling, doing this, that, and the other. And this is the example. We got 3 grids before we got the right grid of where the patient was, right? So that's time ticking. But number 4 is understanding the environment or your capabilities or your limitations. If I'm wearing MVGs and they have a green phosphor tube, why in God's name would you try to mark the LZ with a green chem light? We're not going to see that. So when we finally got it, and it was there was this tank assembly area. It was maybe half a football field long and probably just as wide. And you've had brigades worth of armor out there just chewing it up, right, for a week straight. My pilot in command was like, hey, man, I'm going to take this landing. And I was like, dope, dude. So you're talking a dust landing or under MVGs. So we land, and as the dust settles, I see like this guy swinging a buzzsaw with a green chem light, but now I can see it unaided because I'm looking out the side. And and you could see him kind of looking at us, and we're all kind of looking at him like, why did you do that? Like, that was the worst thing ever. So he like started to slowly slow down and eventually came to a stop with it. And then just kind of like walked away behind a tank. And that was it. So it was assumed that all eyes were on him. And it was like, dude, that wasn't good, man. That wasn't good at all.
Talking before about leadership and the leadership that we've had, what did you learn about leadership when everything fell apart midair?
There's only one way to finish out this flight, right? And in aviation, it's a common expression in Army aviation. Like, if everything's going wrong, just fly the aircraft, man. Essentially, what that equates to in my mind also is, even when everything's falling apart, somebody has to lead. Somebody has to do it. You know, if he, especially most of the time when you have an issue that presents itself in the cockpit, it's really not that catastrophic. It just seems like it because you know if it progresses further, it could be catastrophic, right? It absolutely could be, right? Is it going to happen? That's a low chance, but there is always that chance. So why are you going to get worked up over something that could probably be, you know, you could rectify that problem pretty quickly. Not pretty quickly, but you can definitely fix it or remedy it to kind of break the chain from getting to that catastrophic point. Um, you know, it can be difficult. I've been there. I've been on both sides where I've had an emergency as Joe pilot. I've had an emergency as a pilot in command. And it's like you see both sides of it for what it is. You don't know what you don't know, but you also know what you do know. Right. And so you try to impart that on the people that don't know and try to assist. So yeah, somebody's got to row the boat, dude. Somebody's got to do it.
You kind of hinted on this a little bit earlier by not explaining things to individuals about what you've seen, but how do you explain to civilians that flying isn't as glamorous, but more of like it's war at 180 miles an hour?
I don't know that you're ever going to be able to do that unless you give them that exposure in their face to see what you actually do. Because there's been plenty of people when I've been walking around on posts that come up to me when I was still in that would be like, "Oh, chief, you're a pilot. Like, let me talk to you, man. I want to put in my packet and everything." And it's like, "Okay, cool. Like, here's my number. Like, call me maybe." Right. And most of them don't because of how tedious it is to put your packet in. Like it's a good amount of work, right? Well, number one, when you don't call me or you don't text me, I know you gave up, which leads me to number two, you were never meant to put in the effort to be flying aircraft because it's so easy to see us with our feet hanging out, doors off. I got a big dip of Copenhagen in, which thank God I don't dip anymore, right? God help us all. Utz has changed. But when you see that, what you don't, that's like the 5% legitimately. What you don't see is the 95%. We're talking about performance planning. We're talking about making route cards. We're talking about making kneeboard packets. We're talking about doing rehearsals, all that stuff. That's the stuff that people don't know. And on top of that, just because we're flying, especially me as an instructor pilot, I'm evaluating you, man. I guarantee it. I'm seeing, can you maintain airspeed? Can you maintain altitude? Can you maintain heading? Right? If we're doing an aerosol, can you land within X amount of meters to the X? Can you land plus or minus 90 seconds? All these things. And that's what people don't understand. Don't get me wrong. When you get up and start flying, especially in the national airspace, it's awesome, man. My final flight was over the Outer Banks. Greatest thing in the world. You know how much work I had to do for it? None. You know how many times that's ever happened before? None. So there you go, right? It's a job. It's a fun job, but it's still a job. Like you have a job to do and you have to perform for people that are much higher than you because they expect you to be at that level.
All of your career, both as a Army pilot and as an MP, what did you fear more? Fear of death, failure, or watching your team fail?
Probably my team, I would say, because you should be past that point where you've already experienced failure. So you're able to pass along those lessons learned to your team, to your squad, to whoever, so that they don't fail and you set them up for success. And when you see them fail, it's almost a direct reflection of you failing them. And it hurts, man. It hurts.
So that's kind of where I was going with that, is because to me that's how that would feel. Is it's more of a direct reflection on you because you're training kids, you're training, and sometimes individuals that are older than you, depending on when they enlist. But at the same time, it's like you're the leader. You don't want to let your team down. You don't want to let your squad down. You don't want to let your platoon down, anything like that.
Right. It's hard, man. It's hard.
When you flew with people, did you ever fly with someone that you didn't trust in what did you do in order to calm your nerve?
So the answer is yes. I think you asked, have I ever? Um, I don't know that I would say calm my nerves more over than having confidence in myself. Um, and again, being aware in the moment, being present, aware of my surroundings and my situational awareness. Um, and also being able to put your foot down, you know, it's really strange, but you can have people that outrank you, that say, "Hey, I want to do this." And it's like, no, we're not doing that. Right? And it can either further develop into something else or it just stops right there. Most of the time, and we know this, especially, having been MPs ourselves, when you have that confrontation and you're assertive and you're dominant and you're upfront in your delivery and it's very in your face, just in a quick second, it kind of snaps people out of it. And reality starts to set back in kind of quick. When we start dealing, especially as an instructor pilot, when you're dealing with people who may be dangerous, aren't safety oriented, things like that, you have to full stop it right then and there. And if you have to get assertive in your voice, your NCO inflection, if you will, right? Can't believe I remembered that. But sometimes you have to do that just to get them out of that moment to be like, whoa, like, okay, yeah, maybe we're not doing that, right? Um, because if you're doing something to calm just your nerves, and it's not talking trash, but if you're doing something to like calm your nerves, you're setting yourself up for failure because you should be in the mindset of like, I may have to intervene, or I know I will have to intervene, and I have to do this in order to prevent this. So that's kind of how that went for me.
Would you say that there's a cost to flying with a purpose when purpose keeps putting you in harm's way?
I will always say that there is, because sometimes we need to focus on more than just ourselves. And that could be very detrimental. And there's also um, a high cost associated with conducting business like that, right? But you just have to ask that rhetorical question, is it worth it to you, right? I think a lot of people, when they go searching for their why in life, their purpose, their direction, their motivation, when they find it, they always answer with a resounding yes, this is worth it, regardless of what the cost is.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more with you. So, do you ever sit in the cockpit and you feel like the lion in a cage?
No, I don't think so. I am definitely not lion status in that cockpit yet, for sure. There's a long way to go, right? Um, if anything, I definitely feel like the kid in the classroom, for sure.
How do you fly a calm route when your bones are basically wired for chaos, having been through the ground force battles to medevacs? Like, how do you stay so calm?
That's actually a good question, because if you think about what you've done over the past 22 years, and now you have to wire yourself kind of almost in a completely different way, it can be kind of challenging, especially I think when you deal with unruly people, that'll really test, hey, how much restraint do you really have? Right. And so people will be like, oh man, that's terrible. That person like chewed you out or cussed you out or whatever. You think it's bad for me? Like, go talk to a flight attendant or a gate agent, man. Those people are rock stars, man. How they keep their cool and their job, that's beyond me, man. That's beyond me.
They deal with so much. Being a person that travels or has traveled as much as I have, I've dealt with the fair amount of gate agents, the fair amount of flight attendants, and you get to that point. One, they're doing their job. Two, it's like it's out of their control. There's nothing that they can do. Why are you taking it out on them?
Right. Right. I feel the same way. And, sometimes we're not immune to criticism. And that's okay. If you have something good or bad to say, I want you to be able to express that to me, especially if it takes pressure off a flight attendant or a gate agent, somebody else of our team. I don't care, man. Dude, how many times did we get verbally abused in the military? Like, bro, come on, man. Like we can handle it, right? Now, that being said, everybody has their line. And I would say that the flight attendants and the gate agents, they're the rock stars of having thick skin. So kudos to them.
Just to share a recent experience on a flight that I had is I went to the lounge before, and probably like 30 minutes before I went to my gate, they say, "Oh, we are now delayed an hour." Not what I want to hear when I'm coming home after a long week. But, at that point, I sit at the gate for the hour and I wait. We get on the plane, and now the gate agent has checked in somebody that they didn't have uh, either the proper ticket or they checked in someone twice. So now the gate agent is delaying the flight even more because one, they print out a list, and as they start going through the row to check identification, and it was a paper ticket, and all those that were people with electronic tickets basically on their phone show their phone like, here's my ticket.
Right.
And so now they're trying to go through and cross everybody off the list when the list isn't either alphabetical or isn't in boarding position order.
Right.
And it's like, one, you're going to make this harder on yourself. Not only that, but now you're making everyone else on the plane irritated and upset because you're inefficient and you're not doing your job correctly. But the flight attendants were amazing. The one flight attendant that was up front, and I think they call that like the purser. She was like, "Hey, maybe if you do this here, I'll start marking off people, but go print off this list." And she's like, "I'll do this, this, and this." But the gate agent just wasn't listening to her. And it was like, come on. And I could see it in her face. She was just like, we're just trying to get home. And it's one of those things you're just like, oh man. How do you feel that civilians romanticize being a pilot, and what do they never see, do you feel, about being a pilot?
Man. I would say living out of a suitcase is one thing. I think one of the biggest things is we have a schedule that we're trying to abide by as well. And I fully understand that people have a schedule as well. But when the plane is delayed, we're also delayed too. And we don't like to be delayed as much as you do. We don't like to fly through turbulence just as much as you do. I hate having to wait for weather, and I know they do too. But at the end of the day, it affects all of us the same way. I don't like it when my passengers are upset because of turbulence, weather, mechanical delays, you know, whatever it is. I feel the same way. I'm trying to keep on schedule too, right? So I wouldn't expect a lot of people to understand that. Now, the people who do, the frequent flyers, man, the ones that travel for business, they totally understand. Those people, they will come up and ask you very pointed questions, and is definitely at a level of knowledge that is above your average traveler. So you
Oh, yeah,
gotta
for sure.
kind of be careful when they ask you a question because it's like, hold on a second.
Talking about turbulence, and not necessarily turbulence in the sky, but how do you carry the ghosts of dealing with so much chaos from war and still smile at passengers that are traveling to Cancun or, you know, anywhere across America?
Oh, that's excellent question, by the way. What it comes down to, aside from being a face for the company and projecting that good image that we have, is also understanding that I had a past, and that past doesn't have to define the present. And especially what I'm doing now, I may not be saving people's lives necessarily. I could be. I don't know. But I'm bringing people full circle for whatever it is. It could be they're visiting their grandchild for the first time. They're reconnecting with a loved one. They're going to see their parents in the holidays. The list just goes on and on. So to see that kind of happiness, and especially when you have trips that go right and there's no delays or anything like that, people are happy, you're happy too, man. It's a great time for everybody. And they're connecting with somebody on the other side. They might even just be coming home. You and I both know how it feels when on go home leg. When everything goes right, the wheels go up and you come back down and you land on the runway and you're like, oh, I'm home, man. You don't feel ever so relieved in that moment. You just don't.
100%. And in talking about coming full circle, when did the job stop being survival and start feeling more like routine? And did it ever scare you?
I would say that it's now just becoming more routine because of how technically challenging it is. There's a lot of technical aspects and precision that's required in the job. And it takes a long time for you to get proficient at that stuff. You have to have that meaningful repetition that we talk about to be, let's say, good at something. I'm just now getting to that point where it's like, okay, I'm in the here, I'm in the now. Like, I feel confident in my abilities. I feel confident in my decision making process when we're flying. Now it's starting to come to that point where you're starting to lean over and you're getting ready to start looking at upgrade to captain. Now you have to start thinking about those things and you should start being proficient at those things. Am I an expert? No. I'm not perfect, but does it feel a lot more comfortable than it did 8 months ago? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever miss the adrenaline, and more so that you care to admit?
I'm going to say no, because there's definitely been times where I get the adrenaline now, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's because I've been out of it for so long. It's not to say that it feels foreign to me. It's just, I think I've had my fix and I don't necessarily need it anymore. Um, Especially when you're doing it for work, especially in this line of work. Adrenaline is only good if you're excited to see somebody um, once you walk out of the terminal. That's how I view it. I don't want adrenaline um, outside of routine operations. Outside of advancing the thrust levers and me coming back and we're taking off. Like, I don't think there should be any adrenaline.
I think the majority of people that we have been stationed with and we have deployed with, I think they would agree with you too, is that, we're at that point in our lives that the adrenaline is waking up every morning and appreciating what you have, where you have it, and that's the most that we want to get out of life, is just being able to appreciate those that are around us.
Dude, the biggest adrenaline rush that I get is trying to make my front yard grass look the best in the neighborhood. That's where I'm at in life.
You got to pass the HOA.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're already out measuring, so heavy is the head that wears the crown, I guess.
Now we've kind of just come full scale around. What's your internal checklist now, beyond pre-flight, beyond protocol? What's your mantra? What's your?
I think what gets me the most is right now being able to have an impact on someone's life and show them that, excuse me, even somebody like me from a small town, this is something that can be done. This is
Utica.
achievable. No, it's south of Rochester.
Oh, Rochester. Okay.
Yeah. Being able to affect change in people's lives and give them that exposure, especially when kids, or more often than not, it's their parents, because they're just absolutely terrified to talk to you, right? They say, hey, can Johnny or Sally come up into the cockpit? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Right. I want them to have that exposure because I want them to spark that curiosity in their mind and get excited about something, regardless of who they are, their background, where they're from, anything like that. Just forget it. You just need to be introduced to it, to turn on that light and have it never go out. That's what I'm hoping to do. That's what gets me going, because I know there's probably a little Andrew Utz out there. Hopefully, he's not a little a-hole like I was, but is able to see what I'm doing and says, you know what, I want to do that, and doesn't stop, and is able to get to that goal.
I don't ever think you were an a-hole. I always remember you with like the biggest dip in that bottle. And
Oh man,
I could always remember Shauna Lovetree, DeVille,
yeah. Oh my gosh, the static line injury.
right?
Yeah,
Grandma's nose.
yeah, all the good things in life, right?
Those were the days and those were the memories that will forever be ingrained in my head. Now anyone who listens to this will know, but for the most part, like the actual you had to be there moments.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, this is just what we're talking about in a public setting, right?
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than what we've been talking about. And it kind of goes to society now. Like if I did then doing that now, like it would be big trouble for me. Like absolutely. Like they always say you can't do that now. You can't do that nowadays.
It's like, what do you mean I can't do that?
I mean, I did it. Like, what do you want me to do, man?
Sorry, not sorry.
I'm unapologetic in my past, man. It's who I was, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
You used to fly to save lives. And what motivates you now? Now that you're out of the military, retired, now that you're out and you're flying commercial, what motivates you now?
I think it's sparking that curiosity in someone's life for sure. Another part of it is connecting people. It doesn't matter what they're there for. You are completing that circle. You are building that connection. You are enabling that, and it's really powerful to see it. If you ever stand outside the arrival hall or the terminal and just watch people come screaming out the door with their arms wide open and a big smile, tears on their face, and they just embrace somebody. That's powerful, because you could say, you know what? I helped do that. I helped make that possible,
It
you know?
reminds you of Green Ramp.
Oh, it it does remind you of Green Ramp, man, because dude, when you man, especially that first deployment where there was no mid-tour leave, or it was only available to a select amount of people. Like I hadn't seen my parents in over a year, man. That's powerful, dude. When you have that embrace and you love somebody that much and you see that, it's powerful, especially when you're like, man, we had to go around thunderstorms, we had a maintenance delay, blah, 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 blah. Like I did the best that I could. I got them there. The landing, we'll talk about that another time. But I did get you to where you needed to go.
Even the first deployment, like I came later, more halfway through the deployment. So there was no like mid tour leave. I mean, it was maybe like, well, it was 10 months. So 2 months into the first deployment. So there was no mid tour leave because I didn't start when everybody else did. But at the same time, it's like, man, we all go through the same struggles. And after that 10 months, like Green Ramp it's that sigh of relief for everyone.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's the same for even when I travel back to see my parents and they pick me up at the airport. It's like you walk through this short little tunnel before you get out of the no, you can't go back point.
Yeah.
It's
Don't slow down. Keep walking.
yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I may have forgot something. Nope, sorry, you got to keep going.
Yeah, you're not turning around on that one.
What's one part of the mission mindset that you refuse to let die, even in the civilian side of things?
Oh man. I would just say always giving 100%. You always have to be 100%. Now there's times where that goes right out the window. Like if you are sick to death, like dude, just call out. Just do everyone a favor and just stay home, right? There's obviously times where you need to know yourself and understand whether you're being a benefit or you're devaluing what you're trying to do and the people that you're working with as well. But giving 100% and striving to be better constantly, and not in an obsessive level, but we should all try to be better than we were the day before, regardless of what it is. You know, I struggle with it playing chess with my 8-year-old. She's getting good, and it's really upsetting. But you know what?
I have a few rapid fire questions for you, super quick. All right, so Blackhawk blades or jet engines, what gives you goosebumps?
Blackhawk blades.
Worst sound you've ever heard in a cockpit?
Someone cussing very loudly and not giving a preface to it.
Gunfire below or silence at 30,000 feet, which rattles you more?
Silence at 30,000.
One mission you'd relive and one you'd erase.
One I would live was a medevac out in Fort Bliss, and I got to do a live hoist of a guy that went off a cliff in a car, and he was trapped. That was really cool. One that I would erase, I would say probably my first landing in an airplane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This one's going to be hard. Which one's harder, pulling the trigger or pulling yourself together?
Pulling myself together.
When the adrenaline fades and the silence sets in, what do you hear the loudest?
What I could have done instead of what did happen.
Which was harder, facing the enemy in combat or facing your thoughts when the mission ended?
Facing my thoughts.
How do you unpack trauma when the world expects you to just keep flying?
One day at a time.
What's your internal battle you fought that no one ever saw but nearly took you down?
Not believing in myself.
That's always the tough one for, everyone. If you can't believe in yourself, no one's ever going to believe in you.
100%, man. And sometimes you really need that hard reality of life to just smack you in the face, man. And it's amazing what it'll do for you. It'll wake you up really quick. And when it does, it's kind of actually refreshing. I'm not going to lie.
And one goes on kind of what we talked about earlier. And you can either decline to talk about or you can indulge the listeners. So tell everyone about Shauna Lovetree.
Pass. We'll pass, man. We are. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Or Grandpa's nose.
That's red light.
Fair enough. Okay. So, final question. Has peace ever felt comfortable after living in chaos for so long?
I wouldn't say that it's become repetitious. There are moments where I can enjoy the peace. It's very hard to settle into peace constantly, if that makes sense. A little bit of chaos is okay. Not too much. It's hard when you have kids because they don't care. They're going to do whatever they want to do. But for the most part, I'm getting towards that place where peace is comfortable and I'm willing to accept it and embrace it.
One additional question. If you had to give advice to anyone on any topic, what would that advice be?
You are only as good as you let yourself be.
I love that. That is amazing. And I agree with you wholeheartedly with that.
Yeah. Because you know what? There's only one person stopping you from being great, and it's yourself.
Exactly. Well, Andrew, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been great catching up and love being on the show, brother.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good night.